Good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome to 2024 elections. My name is Faraz, but I would like to say Jazakallah to you for joining us. Of course, we're coming to your screens ahead of the elections every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Today, the political party that we're going to be speaking to is the Inkhata Freedom Party, of course, founded in 1975 under the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Of course, it was a party that was in with government at the dawn of democracy as part of the government of unity. And then, of course, we saw the IFP shifting to the opposition benches just after the 2004 elections. Joining us now to look ahead to the elections and, of course, the aims and the ambitions of the party, I'd like to welcome IFP Chief Whip Narend Singh. Mr. Singh, good evening and thank you so much for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum to you. Walaikum assalam, Faraz, to you and your viewers.
Mr. Singh, of course, this is the first elections that, the IFP is going without Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Of course, he was front and center with regards to being there when it came to campaigning, when it came to electioneering, when it came to speaking to community. So a little bit of a different campaigning that has been happening now, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. We always relied on his wisdom, on his leadership, and we miss him dearly, and I think many South Africans miss him dearly as well. But I think the advantage we have, especially people like me who've been working with him for the past 35 years or so, we've learned so much from him. We've about honesty, about integrity, about social cohesion, bringing communities together, irrespective of whether you are black, blue, red, Indian, white, colored, Muslim. He had friends across this, the spectrum who respected him because he respected them. So it's a tough ask, but we are dedicating this elections to his legacy.
Mr. Singh, let's look ahead, of course, to, then and now. Obviously, when it was 1994, the methods of electioneering is very different. You rely to door. Not that there is, of course, no door-to-door today. There's so much of it. But social media has, of course, played quite a huge role. Now, some of the smaller political parties or the more youthful political parties would say, hey, look, we have innovative ways that could maybe beat the parties that have been there and done that before. So how has the IFP in its campaigning, been able to stay up to date, number one, and number two, make sure that they still have the vote of the youth?
Yeah, for us, you're right. Some of us may be in the departure lounge now, but fortunately, in the last 2 years or so, we've managed to bring around us a team of young people who are very au fait with social media and things you call Instagram, Facebook, and X, which are things that you won't find me very often on those platforms. But we've got a very innovative team that have been working with us, and we've bought into many of their ideas. And it's working extremely well in terms of social media, Facebook, IFP TV that we've got, and our bus campaign, our helicopter campaign, and we are really on the ground. The senior people are trying to talk to people about our policies and address rallies, whilst our media team, which has been excellent, have been using social media more than we've ever used social media before, and it's bearing fruit.
Mr. Singh, the KwaZulu-Natal province, and that is, of course, a province that is quite rich in history for the Inkhata Freedom Party, back in the 70s, of course. And we've got another party that has, which is rich in history within that very same province that has just emerged now, of course, that is the MK Party. Jacob Zuma, it's no secret that there's a huge admiration from the residents of that very same province. Is the IFP concerned that maybe the MK Party could be stealing some of its voter share within that very same province?
Well, let me say we are fishing in the same pond, especially in KwaZulu-Natal. And our view and our analysis says to us that the MK Party, which is a breakaway of the ANC, is going to be taking largely disgruntled ANC members, because, the president and the leading candidate of the MK is a former president of the ANC. So I won't say we are not concerned, but we're not overly concerned because we are going around spreading our gospel we've been around for, like you said, 1975. We've been around as a political party from 1994. We have been in government, in KwaZulu government. We've led the government. We are leading 28 municipalities at this moment in time. So we've got a track record of governance. And I can't say that of some of the new parties that are coming online because they don't have that kind of institutional memory of governance that we have.
The multi-party charter, of course, which the IFP is part of, how do you separate being part of the multi-party charter and that, of course, being the independent party that you are as the IFP? Because we've seen other parties within the multi-party charter obviously campaigning as their own party. So maybe can you just give us a breakdown with regards to the IFP's role within that multi-party charter, but also the IFP's role as the IFP as its individual party?
Yeah, for us, I think why the multi-party charter came about is like-minded parties, like-minded on the way the economy should be run, like-minded on the way of expropriation, land expropriation with compensation, good governance, good service delivery. I think these are the things that brought us together to collectively try and bring the ANC down below the 50%. Because once you have over 50%, you have a sense of entitlement and you feel you can do whatever you want to do. And there are no checks and balances. But one of the agreements within the multi-party charter is that we will go into this election as independent parties, espousing to the community out there our own policies. And by the way, we don't agree with the members within the multi-party charter on all the policies that they follow and espouse to the community. There could be differences, but I think by and large, the economy, good governance, honesty, integrity, accountability are common factors that have brought us together. So we will continue working and campaigning as the IFP with our own policies, our own manifesto. But at the end of the day, I think we have some partners there that we could work with even post the elections.
Mr. Singh, you mentioned, of course, you don't disagree with some of the multi-party partners. I want you to get your take. Various political parties have voiced their displeasure at the DA's advert of the burning of the South African flag. I just wanted to get the IFP's take on that advert, which has, caused a lot of controversy and a lot of discussion on social media.
Well, it's very unfortunate that happened. We as the IFP, we respect all the national symbols that we have. I mean, it took blood, sweat, and tears and the loss of many lives, people being incarcerated to where we reached in 1994. And I think the sense of uniting South Africa is something that must be uppermost in our mind. We may disagree on some issues, but we need not be disagreeable. And I think our loyalty and our patriotism to the country must always override any other issues that we may have with the kind of governance that we are currently exposed with. So it's unfortunate, and we would never do that kind of thing. In fact, sometimes we see members throwing T-shirts down of other political parties or burning those T-shirts. And I remember Prince Buthelezi at one stage when ANC members who had the ANC T-shirts on and were joining the IFP, I can very clearly remember when they took those T-shirts out and threw them on the floor, he picked those T-shirts up himself. And he said, listen, we've got to respect the political party. We've got to respect these parties for who they are. And if you have a different point of view, let the public decide whose point of view they want to agree with and who they want to be in government moving forward. So we have the utmost respect for our country and patriotism.
Mr. Singh, before we go to the break, of course, it's 20 years since the IFP has joined the opposition benches. From an opposition party perspective, how is it, a sense of really the accountability phase when you're taking on, of course, the ruling party? Because it's very different when you, of course, were part of the government of national unity as opposed to one sitting on the bench. So, how is the IFP, in your view, evolved as an opposition party or sitting in part of that opposition benches within the National Assembly?
Well, the one thing we've learned for us, and it's part of our legacy from Prince Buthelezi, call a spade a spade. Don't call a spade a shovel. And Prince Buthelezi has a number of occasions during the State of the Nation address, when the presidents of the country were sitting in the House, he would tell them where they went wrong. He would decry the fact that the ruling party was having squabbles like they had. And I remember when former President Thabo Mbeki was removed from office, he said to the new leadership that, you see, what you have done is wrong. Because today you're doing that to him, tomorrow it'll happen to you. And he always taught us to respect the office, and not, if you don't agree with the person in office, but you always respect the office. So being in opposition is not an easy thing in the National Assembly, particularly when there is a majority party who control all the portfolio committees, who can use their majority to pass any legislation, unless it's legislation that deals with amending the Constitution, where they need two-thirds, and then there's a lot of lobbying in that regard. But we are fortunate that the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts is none other than our own member, Honorable Koleko Shlengwa, and he's done an excellent job. He's been impartial in carrying out his functions there, and I think it augurs well, and it will augur well for the new parliament if we have a system where you have members of the opposition, and I'm not saying we're going to be in the opposition because we want to be part of the majority, but you have members of the opposition chairing portfolio committees. You have members of the opposition being in part of government, so that there are these checks and balances and accountability. Otherwise, it becomes a one-way train, and that is the unfortunate part of our current democracy.
After the break, I continue my conversation with Narend Singh from the IFP. To stay tuned to 2024 elections. Welcome back to 2024 elections. I'm in conversation with Narend Singh from the Inkhata Freedom Party. Mr. Singh, thank you so much for staying with us. Of course, we've heard the IFP leader, Mr. Tlapisa, speaking about, what the IFP wants in terms of its manifesto when negotiating. Should there be the possibility of a coalition? And of course, the IFP is either the kingmaker or is going to play quite a huge role. What would you say are the T's and C's for the IFP when entering into these coalition negotiations?
Well, the T's and C's ideally for us would be ensuring that whatever we've promised in our manifesto, government can do. And I think every party will come forward with its manifesto and say that we promise to the electorate of South Africa that we'll do A, B, C, and D. They may have an E, or they may not have a B. And I think we'll have to come together and see how we can bring together the common issues in the manifesto, like good governance, honesty and integrity, accountability, growing the economy, ensuring that load shedding becomes a thing of the past, ensuring that we invest in infrastructure, good roads, good ports. Our state-owned enterprises must be functional. And then saying, if these are the things that we want, how do we do it? How do we implement and make sure that these things happen for the benefit of all South Africans? So I think when it comes to coalitions, there must be these common values that must underpin a coalition. And here again, for us, I want to say, in any coalition around the world, you will never find coalition partners agreeing with everything that each one says. But as long as you can agree with the fundamentals that will take the country forward, that will grow the country, that will bring economic freedom to the majority, then it's worthwhile entering into that coalition. I mean, I don't know if you're married, but all of us who are married, we know when we enter into a marriage, there are things we don't agree with in the beginning, but you find each other as you move forward. You try and convince each other that, I'll sleep on the left-hand side of the bed and you sleep on the right-hand side of the bed. Or I like hot curry and you don't. So these are things, I think it's like a marriage. A coalition is like a marriage. People coming together, getting engaged, but engaging in discussions as you move forward. But the main thing must be ensuring that South Africans can benefit from the government that you put together.
Mr. Singh, I'm not married, but I definitely agree with you on the hot curry. Curry has to be hot. There's no two ways about that. Mr. Singh, we see coalitions, of course, within the metros. It's left a very sour taste in the mouth of the residents, especially in Gauteng. We see the city of Ekurhuleni, we see the city of Tshwane, and of course the city of Johannesburg, where we see the musical chairs of leaders occurring. There's a fear that that may happen if we are heading into a coalitions on a national perspective. So how do we as the citizens, and of course you as members of the National Assembly, create a framework that allows there to be stability within the leadership in that very same National Assembly?
Yeah, for us, it's very unfortunate that some of the local governments operate in the way they do. I mean, you cannot have one person out of 200 seats becoming the mayor of a city, especially a metro. Then it's just about positions. Then it's just about horse trading. You know, I remember the days in the House of Delegates where the people used to talk about crossing the floor and wearing the carpet out. That's the kind of thing that happened. But coalitions must be based on principle and not on personalities. And unfortunately, I think even as we enter into coalitions now after the 2024 election, it's going to be a difficult time for us, for the country, for political parties to find each other. And hence, you know, the deputy president of the country, probably 6 months ago, invited all of us to a huge workshop at the University of Western Cape, where we wanted to put some kind of legislation together that will ensure that we have a basis for coalitions to thrive. Unfortunately, I think one of the points of disagreement was that some of the parties didn't want a threshold, meaning that, you know, if you get less than 2% of the national vote, then you don't even get into parliament. So the threshold was the issue, and that matter died a slow death. But I think it's important as we move forward to have some kind of legislative framework that will govern the way coalitions work. And that's going to be absolutely important for us, because we can't have the kind of shenanigans in Gqeberha, Ekurhuleni, and you know, city of Johannesburg and some of the other cities. So I agree with you fully that coalitions are not all coalitions are working at local government level, but at national level, it's going to be a new ball game. It'll probably be the first time. But we have had a government of national unity in the past, but that was mandated by the Constitution. If parties had X% and more, then they were obliged to be part of the cabinet. And governments of national unity worked well. If we can return to that kind of system to ensure that we have that kind of government, working together in the executive, respecting each other's views, not just ramming your own view, then I think it'll bode well for the country as a whole. And I always say government must not work in isolation. We've got the private sector, we've got business, we've got labor. And unfortunately, those partners are neglected in many instances, and that must not happen. If we need to build this economy moving forward, the private sector has to be involved. Government plays a part in just creating conditions, but the private sector has to be involved. And this is how the IFP would bring issues to the table.
Mr. Singh, the realistic ambitions of the IFP, of course, this is an elections with so many new parties coming into the frame. We've got independent candidates that are there. So if I were to, you know, give you a sort of percentage of where the IFP would want to be within a National Assembly perspective, and of course provincial legislature, especially of course in the Gauteng and the KwaZulu-Natal province, where the IFP has quite a strong a presence. I mean, what percentage would you look at in terms of National Assembly and provincial legislatures in those two provinces?
Well, National Assembly, you know, we want to look at nothing under 8%. At the moment, we are about 4. We want to double our numbers, and we believe that can be realistically achieved. At one time, we had 10%, but we don't want to be overambitious. But we rely on the South African public. We rely on your viewers who are listening to this program to clearly assess all the political parties and actually for themselves tabulate and tick the box on who has done what, who has been constructive opposition, who has said the right things for the country, but because of the numbers, we might not have been able to get our issues pushed. But I must tell you that being in the National Assembly, and I think you can ask this of ANC members as well, they've always respected the view of the IFP because, we are just not an opposition for the sake of being opposition. We are constructive opposition. In KwaZulu-Natal, we are aiming to be the largest party in terms of numbers. Whether we achieve 50% plus one will again depend on the voting public in KwaZulu-Natal, but we ask them to come out, particularly the 14 million registered voters who have not voted in the past. So we make an appeal to them. But if we are not the largest party, then we will see what type of coalition that we have to enter into. In Gauteng, we've had members, and there is this term called kingmakers. I don't know why they call them kingmakers and queen makers. Our ladies will feel offended. But even in Gauteng, we are at the moment just holding the balance of power over there. But we don't want to use our seats irresponsibly. We just have to make sure that whoever you go with has the same aims and ambitions and vision for our country. I mean, 30 years has been too long. Good things have happened, but there's much more that needs to be done for us to say that, we've arrived. And we have not arrived yet as a country.
Mr. Singh, I left this final question with regards to what's happening globally, of course. We see what's happening in Gaza, the genocide there, 35,000 innocent people have been killed. Of course, the IFP, during the National Assembly sitting for voting the motion of against removing the Israeli embassy from South Africa. And I know that the IFP has always held a very strong relationship with Muslims, especially in KwaZulu-Natal, because there's a strong Muslim presence dating ever back to the days where Muslims came on the ships and worked within the sugarcane plantation. So there's always been a strong history there. But some of the Muslim voters feel a lack of trust because of the IFP's stance on what is currently happening in Palestine. I just want to give you an opportunity to talk with regards to that and maybe speak on the IFP's position right now on the current catastrophe that is happening in Gaza.
No, thank you, Faraz. I really appreciate this opportunity because if you didn't raise the question, I would have brought it up because I realize how important it is, not only to the Muslim community, but to humanity. I mean, what is happening in Gaza is unacceptable. It's really unacceptable, where we see thousands of helpless women and children being decimated in the way that they are. And then we find that, the courts of the United Nations are unable to manage the situation well. And we appreciate the fact that countries like Egypt and Qatar are now coming forward to try and broker a deal. And inshallah, there will be peace, but it takes, real people who don't have personal ambitions to want to move towards a peace and harmony. Palestine has to be an independent state. We've said it for many, many, many years now that there has to be a two-state solution. But most of all, we've got to respect the lives of women and children. And what is happening now with the loss of 35,000 people, we really, find that deplorable, to say the least. And there should be action taken against perpetrators who would kill innocent women and children. Now, you spoke about the motion in Parliament, and fortunately, I'm in my office now, so I've got it right in front of me. Sometimes when motions are tabled in Parliament, this motion was first tabled by the EFF, and then subsequently amended without consultation by the ANC. And the ANC added a clause there that they want the diplomatic relations with Israel to be suspended, and then until a ceasefire is agreed to by Israel and Israel commits to binding United Nations facilitated negotiations whose outcome must be a just, sustainable, and lasting peace. Now, that's the last line of the resolution, but it had 9 other issues before that. Issues like we condemn the killing of defenseless children and women in Gaza, including the bombing of hospitals, calls on all freedom-loving people of the world to support the campaign to take back their land in all of its manifestations. Now, these are things we agree with, But unfortunately, when a motion is put to the House, they're not put in sub-clauses, they just put as a motion. What we didn't agree with, and we hope that there's some understanding for this position of ours, is that if you shut the doors on negotiations, if you start closing embassies, who do you talk to? And we looked at South Africa as an example. In way beyond, before 1994, President Mandela and the ANC were negotiating with the then National Party government. Negotiating, I'm emphasizing the word negotiating. It took outside help to come in, add pressure, but the kind of stance that the ANC and other political parties adopted of the armed struggle and sanctions didn't work effectively. So at the end of the day, it was negotiations, however unpalatable, but enemies, let's put quote unquote, enemies had to sit around the table and try and find each other. So in this case, we are saying that there has to be a way of continuing the talks, but we can't have certain leaders, trying to do things for their own selfish and personal interests. And what we've seen within Israel itself, that there's an uprising in Israel against the kind of leadership that they have. And I think that's a good thing for us. It's a good thing when people in your own family tell you as the head of the family, listen, you are doing wrong. And that is that kind of internal pressure must continue, while external pressure from the ICJ or whoever else must bring peace and harmony and bring people together so that they can talk about the future. I just also want to say a political party, and you know who I'm talking about, are trying to use this thing about Israel and Palestine and the unfortunate circumstances quite disingenuously. By saying certain parties support Israel, the other parties don't. I mean, let us not be blinded by the failings of that political party within our own country. And inshallah, when peace returns to Israel and Palestine, we will be left with the problems in this country for the next 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. And is that something we want? So whilst we want to change things in our country, and we believe that we as the IFP would like to be agents of change in partnership with communities, let us always be mindful of what's happening outside of South Africa as well, but also importantly, what's happening in our own country. We've seen unrest. We saw what happened in 2022. We saw 300 people being killed. We saw billions of rands of destruction. Now, we cannot allow that to happen while we look at something else. Although every issue to ensure peace, reconciliation, good governance is extremely important to us as human beings. And as you know, your religion teaches you, my religion teaches you that we are all human beings, we are equal. Prince Buthelezi would say we are like we're ingredients of salad. The carrot is a different color, different taste, the chili is different, the onion is different, but when you put it together in the bowl, it's this wonderful salad. And that's who we are. South Africans who need to come together and bring our and be united in diversity.
I think it was 2021 that the unrest happened. I just wanted to correct you on there, but unfortunately, we have run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us here on 2024 elections. Mr. Singh, all the best ahead of the elections for this year. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Thank you very much to you and your viewers, and God bless.
It's an absolute pleasure. That's Narend Singh from the IFP. He serves as the chief of. That's all we have for you from 2024 elections. From myself, Faraz Patel, and the rest of the team in Johannesburg. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.